Really quickly, everybody, I am Rhodehawk, your humble host. Welcome to our Legend ZA spoiler cast. I am so incredibly excited to have this conversation with everybody today. And as we go into this, I'm gonna go from who I can see how in like the names in the list of people today. But we have an amazing cast today. In particular, we're also gonna have an icebreaker question as usual, and I'm gonna start with you, Abby. When it comes to this, can you remind us who you are, what you do on Bulbagarden, and then also let us know if you played Legend ZA on Switch or Switch 2.
Yeah, so I'm Abby. I am one of the moderators over on our Discord, and I am also one of the Twitch streamers on this very channel. I was live just earlier today with some Pokemon Unite, and I did play this game on Switch too.
And then I'll move to Fennec. Can you let everybody know who you are, what you do, and if you played on Switch 1 or Switch 2?
Yes. Hello, I am Frozen Fennec. I am a Bulbapedia leadership board member and a Discord head admin. I play this on Switch One.
And then Butterflygon, can you let us know who you are, what you do, and where if you played on Switch 1 or Switch 2?
Well, I'm playing on Switch One. And I am a super mutt in Bulbagarden, but in Bulbagarden I'm called Ghost Diplodocus, or GD for short. That might be easier and more recognizable for all of you.
I will make sure to honor that. Storm, will you please let us know who you are, what you do, and if you played on Switch 1 or Switch 2?
I am currently playing on Switch 2, and my name is Storm. Storm Aurora, if you want to be formal. And I am also a member of the Bulbapedia leadership board. And yeah.
Caps, do you want to remind everybody who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'm Caps, TheCapsFan on Bulbagarden. I run the Twitch and YouTube channels here. And I'm also a forums admin as well, so you might recognize me from there. And I played this on Switch too.
Awesome. I'm glad we have at least one person who played on a regular Switch. But getting into that, and I kind of want to open this up, have a great conversation about this, but let's start with the catching mechanics. What do you think about the changes made to the catching mechanics from Legends Arceus? And I see we have Fennec who had an interest in this. Go right ahead.
For like the catching mechanic.
Yeah.
I did not play Arceus, but I actually enjoyed the catching mechanic on this one, since you shows how likely you are to catch something, but also just if there's no possibility of it being caught, it just doesn't let you have that option. It's very handy.
I definitely
Sorry, go ahead.
I definitely thought it was definitely a step down from Arceus. I felt like just primarily because of the stealth mechanics. It's like the catching itself is technically not that different. But the lack of the stuff like berries and smoke bombs and all of that kind of stuff in Arceus that you could kind of use to manipulate the Pokemon is just kind of gone. It feels so hard to actually sneak up on stuff and catch it. And then once they're mad, you just really need to focus on them. So I found without like all of those extra tools for stealth and being confined to smaller areas, it was a lot harder to catch stuff in a way that I honestly did find frustrating. at times. I think people who have made it this far in the game are definitely aware of like the Pyroar wild area and just how impossible it is to do anything there because of how the catching works.
Yeah. I'm actually in the Pyro Wild area right now. And it's a little easier when I can just, spam surf on everything. But it's still really annoying that I have to get rid of all these Pyro just so I can, do anything in this wild area.
I
But
wonder what those Pyros mean for the famous 1 billion lions versus every Pokemon meme.
um, but yeah, I also feel like the catching is a little bit of a downgrade from Legends Arceus. Um, and not and I mean honestly I didn't really use stuff like smoke bombs and berries that often, but I liked um but I feel like in general that be partially because it's a more natural environment, so Legends Arceus just naturally kind of had more natural cover around that you could kind of hide in. A lot of times I'll be trying to sneak up on a Pokemon in ZA, and there's nothing around for me to hide in. Um, and so it's like I just kind of have to you know wing it and hope the Pokemon doesn't turn around. Um, and and also the fact that like the um like quick balls are kind of functionally like heavy balls in this game, which is um or quick balls in this game are basically like how heavy balls functioned in Arceus, except without the penalty of them not being able to fly very far. So that much is nice. But I it's I'm kind of disappointed that they didn't have an equivalent for the wing ball, feather ball, whatever. Um, that something that you can use to hit Pokemon from far away. I thought that was really handy, especially especially given that this game has less options for cover. It would be really nice to have something like that. And especially here in Wild Zone 17, when I'm trying to catch Skarmory, it would be really nice if I could throw a Pokeball at them from far away. But no, I have to climb up on the roof and wait for them to fly close enough for the roof for me to lock onto them. And yeah, it's I really hate that you have to lock onto a Pokemon in order to throw a Pokeball at it.
Just to add to that really quickly, with the Pyroar, I think one of my favorite memes that I didn't catch on to recently, or at least a smaller meme, I don't know how big it is, but it was uh, Wild Zone 17, and they had just, this is what Pokemon Legends ZA see this as, and it was a subway station with just a bunch of alpha Pyroar with someone just passed out as the train go by. It was fantastic. And I will add to this, I do love the fact that they have random people in Lumio City who are now collecting your Pokeballs for you when you do a bad job of throwing them, which is almost always for me. And the fact that I could get I think my worst time was 20 something Pokeballs back for free without having to spend a ton of money on it. That was brilliant Pokemon design, in my opinion.
Or like when you're trying to have your Pokemon attack something, but you're still in the Pokeball menu, so you accidentally throw a Pokeball instead. So it's nice you can get those back.
Oh, completely.
Actually, being able to get your balls back when you lose them is so handy. I know wish earlier games did that.
I do have to say, I worry about the people going into the wild zones. I know it's like classic Pokemon, to be like, oh, here's a random NPC who gives you something valuable, but I do worry about those UPS drivers who have to deal with the Mega Clawitzer or not Mega Clawitzer, Alpha Clawitzer and stuff. So yeah, and really quickly, I just want to make sure I'm not leaving anybody out, but I do have a next question. But does anyone else want to give any feedback on the catching mechanics in here before we move on? All right. Well, moving into that, we do have a fantastic question as we go, and we're gonna be looking at a lot of different gameplay mechanics throughout this, and I encourage our audience to also engage as we go. One of the things that I've actually really appreciated about Legends ZA has been the focus on battling versus necessarily catching. One of my favorite quotes from the way this game has been depicted is it does what for battle what oh my gosh, I can't talk. It does for battling what Legends Arceus did for catching. And in particular, moving into that, how do we feel about the focus on battling in this game versus the focus on catching?
I definitely preferred it. I've gone on record before saying that I don't really like Arceus that much. And I think part of that is just because that core gameplay loop of just going out, hurling balls at like 50 different Pokemon and then going back, like, was just not as interesting to me. And so going back to like primarily doing battling, I definitely much prefer that. Compared to just the catching style of Arceus. But then also tying it in a little bit, I'm sure we'll talk about this more later. The actual battle style, like I think, was also much, much, much more engaging than the traditional turn-based style, or even the slightly upgraded style that we found in Arceus. I think it was a lot more engaging to have that style of battle being the primary motivator compared to just the catching.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that, one of the things that I truly loved about this game um, was the fact that for me, battling felt really immersive and really unique. And um, I know it's been referred to as the Purge in Lumia City when nighttime hits. But I really liked how in the battling system, like you had intentional time to do other things in the game. And moving into that, I really love the idea um of just in general how battling helped the world to feel immersive. And I'm sure we'll get into more. I don't want to stop anyone else from sharing. Do we have any other thoughts?
Okay, well, I guess I'm in the minority here in that I don't really like the new battling system that much. I prefer the turn-based system. Um, it is kind of nice to be able to that I can run away and stall for time or by healing my Pokemon or whatever. Um, but it's but the um the overall um like the overall battle style, I just feel like it's a lot of it just winds up being a lot of just who can mash buttons the fastest. um in particular, it's like because you have to balance stuff like you know your Pokemon's I haven't quite figured out how like your Pokemon's speed versus like how if how your Pokemon speed like affects like the speed at which you can like the amount of time it takes to launch an attack. Like I'm not sure if that varies depending on the attack or depending on the Pokemon or whatever. And so it's like, I just find it happening, like it always seems to happen that my opponent always gets to attack first. And that gets really frustrating. Especially when, especially when you're trying to, do a bunch of battles in a row and you're trying not to take much damage, but it's like you can't avoid taking damage because your opponent gets to attack first. And it's just, and really, and also the fact that another part of it that really annoys me is that, um, that, because because it's in real time, you kind of have to, act reflexively sometimes. So sometimes I will reflexively hit the wrong button and use the wrong attack. And so I've used an ineffective move instead of a super effective move, and that can be frustrating. Um, and and I also don't like that. Um, this part in particular really annoys me, is that you cannot check the stats of your Pokemon in battle. Like you can see their HP, and like what percentage they're at, but you cannot see like their attacking stats, so you can't double check. Like, okay, is my Pokemon's attack or special attack better? Which one should I be? Should I be using physical or special moves? And that's really problematic because sometimes a mega evolved Pokemon will, its offensive stats change when it goes mega, and you can't see that because you usually mega evolve it during battle, and um, you can't see the change stats during the battle, um, and so it gets so like for example, I had to figure this out by mega evolving it outside of battle. That my Pidgeot, when it's not mega evolved, has a better physical attack, but when it is mega evolved, it has better special attack. So I have to, but it's like I can't check that during battle, and that's really frustrating to me. And it just I feel like it is harder to um it's harder to strategize. Um, so and to me I like the strategy of Pokemon battle. So to me I don't care for this. I don't like the real time battle as much because it prevents me from strategizing.
Yeah, I actually do agree with you, but at the same time, I do find some of that there's some things here that work, interesting. Like for example, how moves like dig and fly are a lot better in this game than they are in the with the turn-based system. Like you use them, you become almost untouchable in this, with the real time battle. Then whereas in the turn-based system, they just usually just give your opponent the opportunity to set up or switch or whatever. Not the case here, and I just thought I mentioned that because I found it interesting. I,
Yeah, that's fair.
I feel
Um,
sorry, go ahead.
no, if you have some, I was gonna go on a slight tangent, but if you have something more relevant, go for it.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I just want to counter the thought that it's primarily button mashing and is not strategic. I think it definitely can be that way, but once you start thinking about positioning and those sorts of things, you really can you really can do a lot of strategy with it. I think a lot of people will talk about this later, but after once you get to like those end game really big fights, you really have to be thinking about like where your Pokemon are, the range of their moves, all of this sort of thing. And so one fight that really stood out to me is there's a request where you have to for the Furfrou League. And was not training up a Furfrou. I was hilariously underleveled for this champion fight. I was using one Furfrou against her team of 6. And just the ways that I had to like dodge outside of like their moves, like, hey, I know this move is coming. This is where it'll be. If I move this way, I can just fully avoid it. And like eventually like building up that strategy to be able to beat that fight was like so much more satisfying than any experience I've ever had in one of the turn-based games.
Yeah, my strategy for that fight was just use a whole team of Furfru and keep spamming Giga Impact until her until they
Yeah,
got
and I
strong
think
enough to take out
yeah,
hers.
you definitely can play that way, but I think there is strategy there if you want to find it.
Okay.
I actually don't mind the real-time battle strategy. Like, it feels a bit more immersive to me, but also I just like to spam dodge roll just to get out of the way constantly. I don't know why. I just like standing in front of the enemy like an idiot and just going at it, my attacks, and then dodge roll every time they get ready to do something. Very fun.
Yeah, and moving into that, one of the things I like to do, and I encourage anyone to speak up, and I'd love to call on a couple people just to hear your voices a little bit more. But what were our thoughts on the Rogue Mega? Oh man, I cannot talk today. The Rogue Mega Evolution fights, especially when compared with the fights in the previous Legends game, Legends Arceus.
So important context for my defense of this battle system is I am absolutely a huge Dark Souls fan, and so I'm very comfortable with this sort of dodge roll active movement sort of system. So that is kind of where my background lies. And in that context, I think these battles were really, really successful. I the alpha fights in Legends Arceus, like the actual scripted ones, were definitely my favorite part of that game. But just the throwing bombs and dodging was not super interesting. And then it really felt like a flow break when you had to actually send out your Pokemon and do all of that. So I thought that being able to have your Pokemon more fully engaged with that was really cool. And then still being able to like withdraw them and focus on just dodging yourself. I think I saw a lot of people when I was watching like streams and stuff of the game struggling with, oh, but how does my Pokemon avoid damage here? Like I'm just having to like kite them out of the way. And you just bring them back in and focus on dodging yourself and can bring them back out. And kind of that back and forth I thought was really well done. Also, just every Rogue Mega fight had so much going on in a really cool way with like unique mechanics. I was expecting them to just sort of be like using the moves. And so I liked that they had like unique mechanics going on and really felt like proper boss fights, especially with how many of them there were. I also see Caps asking about my favorite rogue fight, and definitely Bayonet. All of those extra clones and stuff were really cool, and being able to like determine which one was which and all of that was a lot of fun for me.
So I'm gonna jump in really quickly. I love the Rogue Mega Evolution fights, but clearly, Abby, you know something I don't because I got destroyed in the Mega, not Venusaur, Victory Bell fight with all of that poison, and then I, I had to give myself a day with the Mega Barbarical. That thing was a nightmare for me. I loved
Barbarical
its
was
movement.
easily the hardest fight in the game for me, for the record.
Yeah, so I don't know if it was my Switch or something was going on. I was having a hard time getting off attacks. But then the fact that it just leaps forward and then backs off and can fire out what I think is a hyper beam when you slow down, that was, I think, such a really cool way to make a Pokemon that I think many people don't take very seriously, like a nightmare inducing challenge.
I quite like how difficult it is when it actually encourages at least making an effort to do team building. The only downside I wasn't a fan of is consistently being forced to Mega Evolve to actually do more than just chip damage. That was like my only complaint about it.
Yeah, I don't think the way that you're supposed to mitigate that, I think if you have stuff that doesn't Mega Evolve is like using the plus moves, but they really do not tutorialize that well. I've seen so many people just completely miss out, including myself, for like the majority of the game, just not understanding how that system worked. I think that's kind of on the game for not explaining it better, because those do good damage to the Rogue Megas once you use them, but
Yeah.
a lot of people just don't
Yeah, and
know to
like
use them.
well, I mean, in my case, I realized that plus moves would do more damage, but it's just that using plus moves is really awkward because it's like you have to, because it's like in order to activate your plus moves, you have to use you have to use ZL to target the Pokemon, and then you have to press the plus button, and then you have to use one of the face buttons to select your move and make sure that you didn't like lose target of the Pokemon, because then your plus moves reset, and sometimes it's hard to tell if the plus move has been activated or not, and it's just usually tedious to like it often feels like it's more trouble than it's worth to try to activate a plus move. Um, so I usually just end up relying on megas just because all their moves are automatically plus moves. Um, and I mean I think that's why megas are more effective anyways, is because they get auto plus moves. Um, but um, but yeah, I
I
it,
I appreciate them trying to do something where, Pokemon that can't Mega Evolve can still do stuff in that fight, but it felt like a very clunky implementation to the point where
yeah
I saw most people just built a team of only stuff that could Mega Evolve.
yeah um and like this is and um I did generally like the Rogue Mega fights because as you said, there was a little more strategy. I I felt like I had to do more strategizing in order to like dodge the attacks and stuff. But I did kind of like the alpha fights in Arceus better, and maybe this is just because I'm revealing that I'm a bad gamer or whatever, but it can be really difficult to try to remember to like keep up with both attacking with your Pokemon and keeping an eye on their health, as well as keeping an eye on your own health and dodging attacks, and like having to do both of those at once can be kind of confusing and difficult. And I like it better when I can just focus on you know just focus on dodging, and then and battling is separate. um
Just to add to that really quickly, I think so many valid points. I do, and I can't remember if this has been said, but one of the things I loved about the Mega Evolution fights was the variety of the different fights we got. I know we talked about Bayonet and a couple others, um, but I kind of love the fact that Mega Maywile just disappears from the area for a bit and made it way more challenging. I still kind of steamrolled that one, but I also love the fact that Mega Beedrill gets a lot of love, but all of those like the various attacks that it can launch off so quickly, I honestly feel like it was one of the tougher ones for me. Um and I feel like they put a lot of love and decision making into the rogue mega fights, thinking about the Pokemon and how they would move.
yeah, yeah, it definitely is cool um to get to see the Rogue Megas, just because it's you know to really get a feel for um for how the Mega Pokemon move. Because I know I definitely would not just looking at Mega Barbaracle, that just design wise it looks kind of weird, but when you see the way that it moves, and it's kind of almost elegant, the way that it's kind of like jumps around and stuff, that that really made me like it a bit more. I mean, not that I hated, Barbaracle is probably my least favorite Pokemon, so it's like it's a pretty low bar to make a design better than Barbaracle, but
Now, I think we get to move on to something which is, and I'll be honest, I'm probably going to be quieter than I've ever been on a Bulbacast on this topic because I know next to nothing about it. But I know Caps has voiced some very strong opinions on Pokemon music in the past. But what was everybody's thoughts on the music in this game? And did you have a track that really stood out to you?
oh my gosh, I love the music so much. Um, yeah, it's a lot. So much of it is like remixes of tracks from X and Y, and it's the way that the different remixes of they made two different remixes of Lumio City for daytime versus nighttime, which have really different vibes, but both of them are amazing to listen to, which is great because you spend a lot of time in the city listening to that music. Um, and like how the wild zones use a remix of the wild Pokemon battle theme. But then you still have the original tracks and how like that like all the characters that have their their own unique battle themes. Those are fun. Um, Although I didn't get to appreciate the music as much as I wanted to because I was busy trying to fight the trainers. I couldn't just. I guess you have to just like pause to sit back and enjoy the music, but in the battles, but the overworld music is great. Um, and I thought it was kind of funny that um, sometimes they just straight up reuse music from X and Y because it was already great to begin with. Um, so stuff like like the boutiques, that is just the XY boutique theme. It's a banger, excellent. No notes, amazing job. Um, and I also thought it was really cool. I won't go into too much detail for people who haven't done it yet, but there's a particular sequence in the final battle where where uh where you get like a where it's like you hear a little bit of the remix of the Xerneas and Veltal battle theme from X and Y, and that was a really cool touch. And also just like that, Hotel Z, the background music there is is AZ's theme from um the theme for AZ's story that was used back in X and Y. And so that was a neat touch. And it's like, just every time that I would go someplace new and it would be like, just hit me with a wave of nostalgia because I love the Kala soundtrack, and hearing the remixes of it was just so good. Yeah.
So I actually want to jump in on this if you guys don't mind. So yeah, I think that I love, first of all, I love this soundtrack. I think it's great. I'll start with the negative and then get into the positive. I think the negative is that I wish that there were more tracks, right? Which doesn't sound like, it sounds like kind of like, oh, well, duh, right? The music is good. But no, I do feel like over some time, like, even though the music is quality, some of the themes that you hear most often kind of get a little repetitive. And that's by no means the fault of the people who created it. I think it's just based on, like I do wish that there was a little bit more variety. And when your game is centered in one single location for the entirety of the playthrough, of course you're going to get a little bit of repetitiveness in the music when it's just the same two tracks looping night after night, right? That said, right, the quality of this soundtrack I genuinely think is probably one of the best that Pokemon has ever done. It's up there with Scarlet and Violet, in my opinion. It's up there with PLA. It's up there with Gen 5. It's up there with Gen 3. It's fantastic. Particularly if you're a fan, if you've been involved in the Pokemon community, especially on YouTube, you probably know why I think this is true. Because this is the first time that Game Freak has actually hired outside musicians, like not people who aren't necessarily known within the gaming industry. They did have cameos from Toby Fox in the music in the last couple games. Obviously the Ed Sheeran one, but what I mean is like homegrown kind of talent that they brought in. I'm specifically talking about this guy in particular. I'm going to post his YouTube channel in chat. His name is Insane in the Rain Music. If you liked any of the music in this game, go check out his YouTube channel. He has tons of Pokemon arrangements. He did an entire album full of arrangements of the Sinnoh region, which is probably what got him the gig in this game because all those are fantastic.
Oh my
primarily
God, he was the one who did the music?
He was the one who did the music. He arranged pretty much everything from what I can tell. Because everything has his signature style. Yeah, he's massive in the Pokemon community, and it's honestly like a huge win, I think, for Pokemon content creators, YouTubers, that sort of thing as well. To see them giving him an opportunity, to kind of live his dream out. It's pretty crazy. And yeah, like you can hear his style throughout the soundtrack. It's really good. A lot of it is really brass and saxophone focused, which is his main instrument. And he does like to throw in motifs of other games in the series in here as well. I try to remember which one it was that really stuck out to me, but it was definitely a motif from a different generation, not necessarily the Kalos games that I caught in one of the tracks he had remastered for this game. But the fact that like somebody who's like got a keener ear than me can probably speak to that a little more. But yeah, I think the standout track though is probably the Zygarde fight, and also the ending fight in general, the ending sequence in general, which we'll talk about later. I thought the music there was incredible. So yeah, that's the end of my rants. Check out his channel if you liked his music. Hashtag not sponsored. I just really love this guy's work, and I want to make it known, man. There's more stuff like the music in this game out there if you look for it. All right, I'm done with my rant.
I'm going to jump in really quickly. One, I just want to say, for those listening, if you've listened before, Caps has not gone on that kind of rant and been that enthusiastic about something in a while. The other thing that I find a lot more funny is the snarky, sarcastic tone, as you said, Ed Sheeran. And I was fighting off laughing as you did that. I thought that was fantastic. No disrespect to Ed Sheeran from me. I don't listen to his music, but I find it hysterical that that's like one of the times Caps throws out that much snark.
Well, I think it's important, right? And I think it shows a shift in the direction of Game Freak. I mean, like Scarlet and Violet, they go with this multi-Grammy winning, like mega platinum recording artist to do the final song, and in this one they go with some kind of no-name YouTuber guy who got became a micro celebrity for posting Pokemon covers. It feels like a real shift. It does. And I think that's really important going forward. And for the way, not just like the state of the franchise, but also just like the way that they like incorporate community representation in their development. I hear clarinet now.
I just want to pop in a second, just talk about the music. I don't want to talk too long, but I am not someone who really cares about music in games, which is such a gross thing to say, especially as someone who literally makes games. But I just don't really listen to it that much. I have a video in the background. My ADHD brain is I need to have more stuff going on. So it's really saying something that this game made me want to listen to the music. Just keeping my headphones off and really, really focusing in on it. And so I do think like yes, the one like the well technically two overworld themes was a little rough. I wonder if they could have done something like having like maybe like maybe a couple extra themes like maybe like one per like district for day and night. So like there could be like a Rouge district day and night, John district day and night, Vert district day and night, something like that. I think would be nice to have some more variety. But I also understand not really wanting to do that. And when your base theme is as good as this one was, I kind of understand not wanting to do any more work than you have to. If it was less good and if it was less good at this repetitive, I would be a lot more annoyed, but it's as good it is as it is, so I don't really mind it being repeated so much.
Again, someone who doesn't listen to a ton of music, um, I, I, you know what, Abby, you and I are vibing on the ADHD stuff today. I very much am someone who has to have stuff in the background, but this actually makes me really want to go back and listen to the music. It also makes me wonder, as a massive Pokemon Masters EX fan, if we'll ever get the Legends ZA tracks in the jukebox. Um, I don't know if anyone other than me and Storm plays that game, but that would be, I think, a really cool win.
Yeah, I agree.
I play Masters every once in a while. That's always a relaxing game.
Yeah, and GD, do you have any thoughts on the music in game?
So far, nothing too much. To be completely honest, I rare there's I rarely think much of Pokemon music like either way. Like mostly because I tend to play I tend to play the games at either a low volume or just like or completely muted, for various reasons. I have kind of sensitive hearing, so sometimes there's things that bother me. So unfortunately I can't really comment much on the music, in that sense. Like due to the way I play the games, I unfortunately can't really weigh in much on that aspect. Sorry.
No, I think that's actually a really valid point. As someone who also has extremely sensitive hearing, I'll be honest, I tend to very rarely use headphones on things because my ears are super sensitive. I think that's a really important thing to note in when it's music is, making sure it works for everybody. Um, especially especially if, you know, you're newer to the game or even just having distinguished voices speak up. I think that's very valuable. But really quickly, I'm going to move us to, in particular, our conversation around the changes to Mega Evolution, which is something I have a lot to say on. I'm actually a massive fan of the changes to Mega Evolution, ranging from just more than one per battle being used, the ability to obtain Mega Stones, so many different things. I'm actually going to start off here, and I just want to say, in my opinion, um, the way they executed Mega Evolution in general, including, and I'm sure we'll talk about this here in a moment, but the designs that the Pokemon got, I know a lot of people hate a lot of them. Um, Mega Star Me is out there. I don't know how everybody feels about that. But at the same time, I love that I can switch my Mega Evolutions. I love that I can keep it Mega in the ball when I'm not in combat. I actually feel like the biggest part of this game was taking Mega Evolutions and writing just a love letter to that aspect of Pokemon. And I said this before we started, really bummed that I could never find a Hawlucha, well, never catch a Hawlucha to have Mega Hawlucha. But I love what they did with Mega Evolutions in this game, and I love that it was so central to Lumio City. I don't know if anybody else has similar thoughts, contrary thoughts, but I'd love to open it up to everybody else.
Yeah, I am like I was such a mega hater going into this game. I really didn't like its execution in Gen 6. And particularly, I just like wasn't that big of a fan of the vast majority of the mega designs. Like that was most of my issue with it. And so it was always strange for me to see like people like so insistent that they wanted it to come back because I was just like never that into it as a concept, especially with the weaker designs. And this game fully changed my mind. These are I love pretty much every mega in this game. I think the only one that I don't like is Pyroar because nothing really changes. But um, I truly loved like basically every mega in this game. The way that they feel a lot more integrated into the main story. Like basically every major trainer has a brand new mega evolution. Like it really kept it feeling fresh and interesting in a way that I didn't. In a way that I never felt with the Gen 6 games.
Although I never, hated, the way Megas were exactly Megas in Gen 6, I do have to agree that the games did go a bit too far in making them too exclusive, if that makes any sense. Like, you can only fight two people in the whole game that use Mega Evolutions. And that's it. So yeah, I do agree that they're implemented much better here, and because like in X and Y, the player kind of has an extremely unfair advantage on that point. Like, here's the free Mega Lucario. It and also you get a Kanto starter that will also get a Mega. And yeah, it's it's a bit, it was a bit much. But as for the designs themselves, I've always liked them okay. My favorite newest Mega, I don't know, I think it's Mega Failings, just because it's so funny. The little guy in the middle just trying to hold everyone up. He's so cute. I love him.
Yeah, to jump into that, Mega Phalanx, I love that he's just like, may our powers combined. Adorable. I do have to say, and I am biased, I do like Mega Embor better than Mega Phalanx, but that is because I think that Mega Embor has probably one of the better fire type starters redesigns in a while. I'm not at all still bitter that Emo oh, I can only think Sarah Lich, that's not it. Cyndaquil. The whole thing they did with Cyndaquil really frustrates me with how emo he was. I love emo, but he's the least interesting of the Legends Arceus starters to me, the final evolution, and I love what they did with Mega Embar.
I think my
I
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I don't have much to add that everybody else has, that somebody else hasn't already said that. But yeah, I definitely feel like they took the feedback that people had about the way megas were executed in XY and just fixed it here. That megas are way more accessible. During the main story, and the trainers that you fight use megas, um, and so that they're um, and I like most of the new mega designs. Um, I think my favorite of the new megas is probably Chandelure. I mean, it is exactly how I would have expected a Mega Chandelure to look, and I love it for that. Um, And yeah, that's it. Oh yeah, and I really love that we can use more than one mega per fight because I have lots of megas that I want to use.
Fennec, I know you've been trying to say something for a bit. Is there anything else you want to add?
I was gonna add that I feel like they implemented Mega Pokemon a lot better here. You actually fight way more people that actually utilize them outside of online battles. But I think my favorites, like I love Meganium. It's cute. I I'm I think like Frostlass and Scrafty are standout megas for me. They just made Frostlass tall for no reason, and I love it. It's so
I
dumb, and it's my
I kind of
favorite.
get the feeling that Frostless might have been like a Gigantamax design that got repurposed into a Mega for some reason. Like, I don't know, it gives me that vibe.
I also just want to add, I do think Frostlass is my favorite new Mega. It is so cool.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, I agree. She's beautiful. It's just like I just said, like the vibe I got. It might not be true, and it might just be me. But I do. But it kind of almost feels like a shrunken down Gigantamax form to me.
I like how with
Yeah.
Frostlass, it's like they took the base design and they were like, what if we made them 2 feet taller? Just a few feet taller.
Yeah,
Just to add,
I'm just glad that that Frostlass gets a mega to counterpart Glalie mega, and I'm disappointed that they didn't do the same for Slowking.
Maybe the DLC will help with that. Fingers crossed.
Hopefully.
I will say I absolutely adore I adore Mega Frostlass. I love that it has a lot spookier vibes to it, and I think the rating of this game helps with that a little bit. But I need to shout out really quickly, and then we'll move on to another question. I need to shout out my boy Mega Excadrill. I love the fact that they just made him bigger drill, and yeah, just underrated Mega Evolution in my opinion, especially because it hits like a truck every time.
Oh yeah. Speaking of which, I want to give a shout out to Mega for Alligator, because it may look a little goofy most of the time, but when it puts its little hoodie and its arms together and it makes that giant dragon's maw, that looks so cool.
It basically looked like a gigantic Totodile.
Yeah.
I am going to move us on really quickly to a discussion on wild zones. I know we talked about this a little bit. This is, honestly, I've been very talkative today. This is another thing I don't have a ton to say. But especially how do wild zones compare in this game to the open-ended area of Legends Arceus?
I think in the nicest way possible, they did the best with what they had to work with in terms of just the scope of the game. It like that is my polite way of saying I don't think they're very good. I was not the biggest fan of Arceus, like I've talked about, but those maps were really, really well done and interesting. I think just the fact that they had to be limited by the city, in the way that they did for this game was definitely harmful to the like wild Pokemon experience. The wild zones just they never feel. I guess this like works plot wise because they really do just feel like kind of a barrier set up in the city. So it's lore accurate in a sense, like it matches up with the story, but I don't think that necessarily makes it good gameplay. I just think like especially what I was talking about before with like the stealth and stuff, just not having the space to like really maneuver and like work around the wild Pokemon was a little strange. It was also just like it's very odd to me that they just flat out say like, "Hey, in each wild zone there are like max 8 Pokemon. Have fun." Like it really makes you feel the smaller scope. If they hadn't explicitly like listed that, I feel like it would have, for me at least, felt a lot bigger and more varied. But with them just flat out saying like, "Hey, once you've caught this, there is nothing else to find here," was like really odd.
Yeah. I I felt that the wild zones were a little restrictive at first, but that was until I started exploring the city more and finding out that there are a lot of wild Pokemon that you can find outside of the wild zones, like tucked away in alleys and up on the rooftops and stuff. Um, and so it kind of that kind of helped make it feel like the so I feel like they did a better job with the Pokemon distribution. And my only complaint with the wild zones is that I really don't like the fixed alphas in them, because it's like the wild zones are so small that when there's an alpha in there, it's like almost impossible to avoid it. And if it's like, if it's your first time going into a wild zone, your Pokemon are not strong enough to take on that alpha. And so you wind up just having to kind of, catch a couple Pokemon and then flee because the alpha caught spotted you and you can't defeat it, so you just kind of have to run. And that kind of, diminishes the diminishes the catching experience for me. Um and so yeah, and like it's not like they even had a good, like, like they have they didn't even have a good lore reason for why alphas are in this game. So honestly, I feel like they could have just left the alphas out and it wouldn't have made a big difference. um but maybe that's just me.
I feel like wild zones in particular are kind of a mixed bag. Like on the one hand, it feels really limited. At the same time, given like the in-game explanation is like you're starting to have a lot of wild Pokemon invade the city, it makes more sense to try keeping them sectioned off to other places to not cause as much problems. But like it was already stated, it's like you can also find Pokemon outside the wild zone, like the elemental monkeys or Gumi or Flabebe, Florges, and others. Like I really wish we would did have like an open area. Maybe the DLC will have that. I don't know. But it's like as far as the plot goes, I feel like it kind of makes sense to just have wild zones, even if I'm not like the biggest fan of them.
Yeah,
Like if you're
I
looking
do
for
think
something specific, it makes it easier though.
yeah, I do think it. I didn't mention like the just random overworld stuff, and I do think that is a good way of handling it. Like the stuff that isn't so aggressive can just be kind of out in the world, and that's okay. Although I hate the ghastlies that spawn at night and will just attack you outside of wild zones. That stuff sucks. Um, I do think I do think I don't know that we'll see a more open area just because of the nature of it. In fact, from what I saw of that DLC trailer, it actually looked like it's going to be even less about wild Pokemon. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. But yeah, I do think the overworld spawns were a good way to kind of mitigate some of the uh, like claustrophobia you kind of got from the wild zones.
Just to add one thing, I don't have a ton of thoughts on the wild zones, but one thing I really love to see, and I think I wish it was a little bit more central to the story, but I can totally get why they wouldn't want to go into the politics of it, especially for a Pokemon game. Um, I did find sometimes the most interesting part for me with the Wild Zones was just thinking about the people who have been like kicked out of their homes in order so they don't get destroyed by an alpha houndoom or things. But I think the other thing that I thought really interesting about that, and it definitely felt like they pulled back on some of the real world ramifications, was just like, how do the people like find out that they're being pushed out? Or how would these people who have random stands in the middle of certain areas, did they just have to like run one day and figure it out, or kind of that? And I thought that was really cool that they were like, hey, these are here to house Pokemon, but they're not necessarily always great for people. And I thought that was kind of like a really interesting thing for Pokemon to discuss in game.
Yeah, yeah, I agree that the first few wild zones, it's like they're there from the beginning, and so you don't kind of you don't really think about it much, but once you start seeing new wild zones added, and you realize that like, oh, this place where that I previously been to and saw all kinds of people hanging out there, and now all those people had to leave because there were there it's overrun by wild Pokemon now. Um, that was kind of um that was kind of surprising, um and yeah, and they do kind of have they do kind of have some NPCs kind of address it, um it does kind of feel like it's never quite resolved, which is a little odd, but you know it's interesting to think about.
Going into that, I'm sure this could be its whole own thing, but I know that we probably got some great comments and questions in chat and caps. I'd love to highlight some people here.
Oh, we have many questions in chat. Let me tell you, the chat room has been active tonight. I'm gonna just quickly highlight a couple of things that I wanted to note before we get to those though. And the first thing is we had a poll in chat a while back when we were talking about the turn-based versus the real-time strategy. And it looks like chat prefers the real-time strategy, which I believe was kind of what we had said too as a panel. That kind of seems to be the prevalent opinion that I've seen online, is that a lot of people think that the real time strategies it's simple but it's effective. And I although that being said, I will say that I do think there's still room for the turn based stuff to exist in the main series as well. The other main. There was another comment I wanted to highlight, but I can't. I will move on. So let's go to some chat questions. We've got a couple that are character related, and I want to touch on those maybe as a segue into our next section when we talk about the characters and the story. But to start out, Tatsumi had posted a theory that they have in chat, something about the story kind of alluding to the fact that maybe this universe was a third version of X and Y, where it's not it just like, because they talk about the two weapons, like both of them they use both Pokemon for the weapon or something like that. Do you feel like this could be maybe a kind of alternate reality where but like the Team Flare uses the weapon, but Lysander survives. Something like that. What's your guys' thoughts on kind of where this story takes place in the air quotes canon of X and Y?
I do think that would kind of clear up, because I think I saw this in chat as well, but there have been a lot of there. I had this like a lot too. There's just been so much confusion on where the X and Y characters went. Um, like it is baffling how few of them show up throughout the game. It's really strange, and so I think that kind of lends some credence to it. Just that, like, hey, is this like kind of a different thing? I do think that the thing about mentioning both, like Team Flare trying to catch both of the legendaries, Xerneas and Yveltal, is kind of interesting. I don't know if that necessarily means it needs to be an alternate like timeline sort of thing. I do wonder if I, I guess literally in the games they do just catch one, but I'm curious whether like the Pokemon Company or Game Freak views that as this was how it was actually plot wise, or just this is how it had to be to make two versions make sense.
Yeah, I mean, again, I just kind of interpreted that as, that they tried to catch both, and in X canon, they only succeeded in catching Xerneas, whereas in Y canon, they only succeeded in catching Yveltal. Um, and and they leave it vague so that this can be a sequel so that this can be either X canon or Y canon, whichever one you want.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, in Platinum basically merged, Diamond and Pearl into having Cyrus catch both. So maybe could be like a sequel to a hypothetical Z version where they did get both Xerneas and Yveltal.
Well, and to add,
Go for it.
I was thinking about this, especially as I was playing through, because this game honestly felt to me like this was the XYZ that we got, that like had been rumored for so long. But there's a couple things I want to add to that. One of them, I know there is like multiple dimensions in Pokemon with like the mega timeline, the non-mega timeline, all this stuff. And I'm wondering, because there's a couple other things that are brought up from time to time, in that like people routinely say that the damage or some version of that wording to Lumio City from the ultimate weapon really destabilized Lumio City. But I was wondering about that because Geosenge has the biggest issue with that town, with the literal cabins that got knocked over and nothing happens to them. And I was wondering if this is a different universe or timeline or something. What actually happened to Lumio City? We don't get to see that, and I'm wondering if this is a third timeline or universe or whatever. If the weight of the ultimate weapon had caused more damage to other parts of Kalos than what we saw. And if it did, I'm wondering if canonically that's also part of the reason so much of Lumio City was closed off to other areas.
Sorry, I was suddenly reminded of how in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon the Team Rainbow Rocket post game thing, that how all the villains that Giovanni recruited, all of them were from alternate timelines where they succeeded because the player characters weren't there to stop them. I wonder if maybe there's any connection to that here.
I feel like it's just intentionally kept ambiguous what happened with Lysander, regardless of which timeline it is. Because even with the Ivadal, I think it's just kind of implied he may have survived, but because no one knows where he is, it's like you didn't find the body, so you don't know if he's actually gone or not. And he probably just took some time off to reflect on his actions. Because he seems way more mellow in this game.
Yeah, I mean,
And
like,
then
I replayed XY fairly recently, and they do not address at all what happened to Lysander afterwards. You just kind of teleport out, and the the weapon is gone and all of that, and it's like it is completely unclear as to
And then the
what
enemy
happened to
just
him.
and then the enemy just straight up killed him. Had a little girl kill him with Zygarde.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I think those are all great responses. I'll be honest, I didn't really consider it at all when the question was asked, but after hearing you guys talk about it does kind of make sense, especially the note that GD about the rainbow rockets. But real quickly before I hand things back over to Rode, I wanted to ask a couple of questions that Norman's had posed in chat, kind of combine them into one. And this will be a nice segue into our next discussion about characters. And that is, who is your favorite character in this game? And if you could have one character from X and Y that currently isn't in the base game or Corina, who would it be? If you could put them in this game. That was a long-winded question. Hopefully that made sense.
Can I jump in on this one first?
Absolutely, go for it.
Okay, so I love the characters in this game. Some of my favorite designs, and I know this might not be a popular response, but it kind of makes me think about the Lysander stuff. I hated Corbeau, like right at the beginning, absolutely hated him. And then as they revealed, like, this was a kid who was really down on his luck. He basically got like, and this is the other thing that makes me think this might be an alternate universe. Because it's repeatedly talked about that he like turns to Lysander, and Lysander helps him out. I know like his whole thing is I'm an extortionist and I'm like I come across as an awful guy, but I think he was honestly like a really interesting character. Nowhere near as terrifying as like the fairy specialist who comes right after him. But I was really like, oh my gosh, this is like the Pokemon way of saying this world is really unjust. And like, there are a lot of people in the Pokemon world who do not have much and have to literally build themselves up. And I also have a theory that Corbeau, with how small he is, he also got AZ'd by the ultimate weapon, and he's stuck in like a perpetual in between of youth and adulthood, and that's why he's so short.
You know, short people do exist, right?
I
You don't
do
have
know.
to
Yes,
come up
Oh
with
I
my
am.
gosh.
explanation.
I am fully
It's okay
aware
being
that
short.
short people exist in the world. I'm not here to make anybody feel bad. That is just headcanon for me. And I will say, like, when he helps you towards the end of the story and it literally goes full goofy and you have to climb up the actual Team Rust people, I love the fact that he's just like, okay, I helped you now, and lets go of the building, and his entire team just falls off.
Yeah,
That being
I'll admit, I kind of panicked when I saw that because I was like, "Oh my gosh, is he okay?" And then I fell off the roof, and then they had to make a ladder again so I could get back up.
So that's part of the headcanon that he got hit by the attack. Because they went up stories of like actual people, and he's just like he basically Titanicked himself for the people, for like the main character, and he's like the only character who does that. And it's just like, well, he survived, so obviously he's immortal, or at least he's got a longer lifespan. Anyways, no disrespect to all the short people out there, but
I like how with Corvo, if you fall off the roof twice and you try to do it a third time, he just goes like, "No, you freaking don't." And they just throw up an invisible wall so you can't do it again. They're like, "Stop doing that."
Oh, I didn't actually know that. I only tried it. I only did it the once. Falling off, I mean.
Y'all are better than me. I didn't even try it once. But then I saw the tweet about it afterwards, and I was like, man, that was a missed opportunity. Quality stream.
I do
But
want to
yeah.
think. I
Oh.
in terms of characters for me, I really liked L. The way that they reconciled all of like Lysander's deal and made him into an actually like interesting and compelling character, because man, he sure wasn't an X and Y. I think that was really well done, especially those like later post game scenes. I'm sure we'll get the chance to talk about more. But my favorite character in the game has to go to Lita. I'm sure we'll talk about this more with all of Team MZ, but she she was doing so much and no one else was giving the same energy back to her, and I love her. She's, especially after how lackluster Tierno was as kind of a dance specialist. I think she was really well executed, especially with the whole thing about like being hesitant to evolve her Staryu, even though she was like aware of Mega Starmie and how it could help the Rogue Mega situation. Like just being hesitant because it was her partner and like all this stuff they did together. I thought that was really well executed.
Yeah, I like Lita definitely, and I like Urbane, and I like Naveen, and I like almost every character in this game except Jacinthe. I hate her. Um, but anyway, but we asked for my favorite characters, and that's gotta be Corbeau. Like I like, I'm sorry. I have a soft spot for guys who, seem tough and intimidating and then they're actually really nice. Um and Corbeau is like the definition of that. Um and I kind of headcanon that he has a crush on the player and that's why he's so nice to them. Um cuz my boy does not know how to express feelings. Um and yeah, it's just like, just like that obviously I didn't I was pretty cautious. Oh, I didn't expect to like him at first because he obviously gave bad guy vibes, but then finding out that that he just wants to help the city and just does it in the most intimidating way possible. um it's like it kind of feels like the Rust Syndicate is what Team Flare was supposed to be. um and Yeah, and so I really like Corbeau and how he was written, and he is kind of hot. I'm not gonna lie.
I
Um,
I want to jump
helps.
in here and say, Storm, that I think that Corbeau, I've seen so much thirst for him online. Like, he is without a doubt the people's champion in this game. There's gonna be so many fanfics made about him and the PC, and probably him and like maybe the people in Team MZ. I don't want to get into it, but basically, you're so right. He is the Fed's champion, but I want to quickly defend Jacinthe for a second, because a lot of our audience and a lot of Bulba seems to really, really hate her. But my argument is that that makes her a fantastic character. Because I think that means that she was implemented exactly how they wanted her to be implemented. She's like Nimona, but 10 times worse and rich and snobby and only cares about herself. And it's incredible how well they did it. But that being said, I understand why you hate her.
Really quickly, to throw some fuel on the shipping stuff for Corbeau. So my headcanon still hit by the beam, but apparently he is likely in their late teens or early 20s, though I did a quick Google search and everybody's like he's probably like 18. So just do with that whatever the internet will do within reason. I don't want to encourage traumatizing people, but yeah, there we go.
I think my favorite characters I've come across so far have probably been AZ and Kanari. Like AZ, it's just nice to see they actually finally lived long enough to get some sort of redemption. And he's actually putting in more effort to help out other people, make sure the city's okay. But also Kanari is just seems really goofy as hell when presenting herself. But then she just wants to go back to gaming, like, she doesn't care if she won or lost, she's just like, "Eh, I just wanna go back to gaming, that's all I wanna do."
Yeah, she gets out
No,
her
she
two curse words and then leaves. Goes back to her
she
stream. Literally me.
she's
Yeah,
just like, "I'm sorry for being mad."
I do like Kanari, but I think I would have liked her better if they hadn't just done an electric type specialist who is also a streamer in the last game. It she felt very similar to Ino in that respect. So that did kind of lose some you know lose some points for her in my book. But she also uses like all of my favorite electric type Pokemon, um she has great taste in Pokemon.
I do also want to throw up Tarragon, her grandfather. I adore that old man. And I love the fact that he basically catfishes the entire fan base. Posing
It's
as
so
his
good.
granddaughter. I also really quickly, I know this is another headcanon. Part of the reason I love him so much is because it's stated in game that it's tragic that she has to use there's like a tragic story behind her using her grandfather's laptop, and the fact that we never see her parents, at least that I know of, really makes me think that he is the doting grandfather who had to take in Kanari for some reason, and he just wants to do the best by his granddaughter and make her as happy as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I did get the impression that her parents are like dead or something, so he had to take care of her.
And Kanari doesn't even seem to mind, she's just like, "Oh, I don't have to interact with fans, I can just focus on gaming and still get attention
Yeah.
out of it, it's fine." I like how they work so well together as a family.
Mhm. But on a tangentially related note about family, I am really really annoyed that in like one of her first scenes that Lena mentions having a big brother and then she never elaborates on that again.
Maybe DLC content?
I'm thinking it'll probably be a DLC side quest. That's my guess.
Maybe.
Right. I think we are good to segue into our next question, Road. I hope you guys enjoyed the chat questions. Chat, feel free to keep them coming. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, speaking about all of these fantastic characters, I wanted to ask everybody, what are your thoughts on Team MZ's characterization in general? How do you feel about the different team members as individual characters? I do want to shout out, I think one of the funniest and most relatable things I've seen in a Pokemon game recently have been the croissant curry and just watching, I can't remember his name, but the Scrafty
Naveen.
user just say again.
Naveen.
Naveen. The fact that he just looks at the gelatinous curry with the croissants and is like, I'm not gonna eat that. I can 100% relate to that. But I love the fact that over the story, he kind of just goes like his biggest character development is essentially I will eat curry. And I love it.
All right. If I this is I gave myself permission to rant once in this in this cast, and this is going to be where it happens, because I kind of hate Team MZ, like kind of a lot. I talked about Lita. I think Lita is awesome. I love Lita. She is doing so much. She is incredible. Nothing but respect for her. Urbane and Naveen. Urbane, I think, is my least favorite Pokemon character of all time. He makes me so mad. Just the constant way that he is like, he keeps talking up how, oh, I just want to help the people of Lumiose and do X, Y, and Z and all this stuff. And oh, I just want to help people. Like, that's my thing. And then he actively just like, in doing all of this, he makes life explicitly harder for you and the rest of like Team MZ. Like he makes everything so much harder. So first of all, we all are aware of the whole loan situation in the Rust Syndicate and whatever. That's like, it doesn't end up being that big of a deal. What is a big deal is how he just fully does not seem to care about like actually solving it. He's just like, oh, I'll do this, but oh, first I gotta go off, and oh, I heard these people need help over here. It's like, we are literally in like doing unpaid labor to pay off your debt. You could care a little bit more about like actually like helping us out. And then again, when it comes to the Jacinth tournament, he just completely brushes it off. I'm like, what if I want to still engage with this tournament? Like, Laban has been very explicit about her warnings about what happens if we don't like do this, and like Urbane just like is like, hey, we got to take care of this, like, and does not elaborate. Like, I'm sure if he gave more context, Jacinth would potentially be more understanding. I mean, obviously, as a character, she's like totally crazy, but it would have at least helped his case a little bit. And then like, I have no autonomy in that, and like, hey, being like, hey, I didn't want to do this. Like, I'm just forced to go along with him. And then at the end, like, the whole like, even though like you beat me in battle, like let me go up in the tower, like I want to be the one, I want to do all this stuff to help people. And it's like, I understand from a plot perspective that it probably didn't actually change anything with the final result, but just the fact that he is like that selfish and like wants so badly, it's selfish is what it is, because it doesn't seem like he wants to be, it doesn't seem like he wants to actually be helpful. It's that he wants us to see him as helpful, even when he's being detrimental to things that are going on. And so he wants to do all this to like be the savior and all of this stuff. And what makes me even more upset is like Vinny just like going along with it, the rest of the team going along with it. Like, they don't ever seem to call him out on anything. Like, they're like, oh, that was like a little not fun what you did, but then they don't really actually bring it up again. Like, they just let it go when it is like actively hurting our goal. Even like, we had to take time off of our pursuit of the rogue megas, and so because he was up and dead and we had to work it off with the Rust Syndicate, like that was actively going against what you wanted us to do. And this is maybe the strongest I feel about anything in Pokemon, is how much I hate this guy. And the fact that at the end of the game he like manages to like take over Quasartico is crazy, when he's just been like doing nothing but hurting us the whole game, and now he's in charge of this company that basically controls Lumiose. It's crazy. Anyway, that's it. Naveen is just kind of annoying. I don't feel that strongly about him, but his thing with Canary is a little uncomfortable, and I don't like it in that sense. Also, he's kind of weird about the croissant curry thing. I don't like him, but I don't really feel as strongly as I do about Urbane. Tawny, I don't know. I'm sure she's basically the same as Urbane, but I had Urbane because I was playing as the female character. That's it. Someone else can talk.
That was beautiful. Preach, girl.
That is a valid reading. However, I completely disagree with it. See, I thought that, I think that, that the loan chart, that the loan plot was maybe a little, that he was a little you know, too careless with that. But otherwise, I think it's really noble of him that he is so dedicated to trying to protect the city, and that you'll that that you'll be going back to the you'll be going back to this to the hotel, and he'll be like, oh, I'm gonna take a separate way because I gotta help some people on the way back. And he's just very considerate, um and his thing during the final battle was actually quite he quite good forethought on his part, because if I had gone up there instead of him, then I would be the one stuck in the tower, and that would not have ended well. So I think it worked out. Um and so yeah, my only issue with him is that um because um I understand that this is answered in the post game, but I haven't done the post game story yet, so I still don't know who this person is that he's looking for. Please don't tell me. I want to find out myself. But yeah, that's the only question mark that I have about that that I think keeps me from making a solid opinion about him, because I don't know who he's looking for. Um but from what I from everything else I've seen, I assume that he's looking for that he has good intentions for looking for this person, and not like a revenge plot. Um but yeah, um I really like him. Um and um and it's like and in particular, I liked that um that I didn't feel like I was you know like crushing his dreams or anything by defeating him. um that that it's his motivation is a bit like Hugh in a way, that he wants to get stronger, and he wants you to get stronger. So if you're stronger than him, then that's good, that's helpful for him. And so yeah, I kind of like that rivalry. So yeah. um
So,
and yeah, and I was gonna say something else, but I forgot.
I'm
so
glad you brought up Hugh because I also hate that guy. That is the end of that thought.
I like to
I
forget
was
that
So
gonna
you
sorry for your
exist.
go ahead, Fennec.
No, I was just saying I like to forget that you exist. He just kind of irks me a bit. Like, what the hell, man?
So really quickly, and I'm gonna try not to spoil anything for you, Storm. Um, so when I was through the game and I saw next to everybody who was and I don't think they confirmed this either way. But I kept looking, I was playing as the male character, so I saw Tawny, and I noticed several obvious Team Flare people who had like reddish orangish hair and then a deep blonde. And so my head canon is either like Tawny has some familiar relationship to Lysander. Or at least somebody who was in Team Flare. Because every time I saw Tawny, I was like, oh my gosh, there's a really similar hair color um throughout the game, and it's all tied to this group of people. So I really have a headcanon that like maybe Tawny was related to someone very high or like influential in Team Flare. And I'm like, I would be really cool to kind of see if that was actually Lysander at some point. Because I think it would be really cool to have like Lysander go through this arc of villain and then actually trying to help people figure out his piece and then find out that there is someone in the world that he can take care of and honor and care for. I don't know if they're ever gonna do that, but I feel like that'd be such a beautiful yet tragic way to kind of combine those stories.
Yeah. I did find it really strange that like for most of the game the only people you see with that hair are Urbane Tawny and Grisham and Grizel. It is no one else in the whole game. And so I legitimately thought for most of the game that like Urbane was gonna end up being like a proper twist villain, like because to me so much of what he was doing felt like active sabotage to our mission. Like all this time like, oh, I need to go run off to like help these people out, and then he's like going to like work with like the Team Flare stuff. That was legitimately what I thought was going to happen.
I do want to jump in here real quick because I thought the exact same thing, Abby. I don't want to give my thoughts too much on stream, but I will note that like I think multiple times, I don't know if I said it on stream, but it definitely came through when I was playing on my own off stream. I was like, oh, Urbane and Tawny Urbane is going to be the villain of this story. They're the ones working closest with the corporation. They're always running off, like you said, like, and then the whole issue with them getting in the way and at the end just felt like a big ego trip. And I was like, oh wow, okay, so if you hadn't like gone off and done this, and if you had controlled your ego, literally everything would be fine because I would have been up there and I'm the strongest Mega Evolution user and I wouldn't have had to deal with the destruction. So I completely agree. I really thought that they were going to be the twist villain the whole time, and we'll see what happens in the DLC. Obviously, like there is a scene in the DLC trailer where they look pretty angry at someone or something. So we'll see. You know, maybe there's a little more to their story, but yeah, I completely agree.
So really quickly, I just want to say, Caps, there is an ongoing theory out there that Tawny is the reason everything falls apart. And something about Mega Floette actually rejects Tawny, partly because we don't see what happens after that happens. It's just Tawny or Urbane is just talking to us. And I've seen several people be like, oh my gosh, like Tawny or Urbane is going on an ego trip and they're doing something in the background that they're not telling people about. Because I do think it's very strange that we see that cutscene and then it's just Urbane or Tawny being like, you've got to go here. It's so beautiful from up here. You've got to go here. And I feel like that would be a really cool thing to like have all that chaos and then have them do something they just never tell you about, especially after what happens to AZ.
Y'all are so dark. Urbane is just a friend.
Maybe if he wanted me to think he was a friend, he shouldn't have done that.
Place your bets now, chat.
Urbane is just a little silly sometimes.
He makes mistakes because he's human. Jeez.
No, it's a lot of mistakes in a pretty short time frame. That's all I have to say about it.
For the sake of hopefully moving us on from some Urbane or Tawny slander for Storm, so getting into this, especially talking about what happens in the tower, Pokemon has been getting really cinematic with some of its endings. I know obviously in Scarlet and Violet we have that whole battle against the AI. This one, I think my favorite example of what I've heard it called is like a Kingdom Hearts-esque ending to a Pokemon game. But how do we think this compares to Pokemon Legends Arceus? And I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of that Pokemon every time I say it. Hopefully, I'm not triggering anyone. And Scarlet and Violet.
I so I've talked about my issues with the like story of the ending. I think for the most part the ending was really well executed story wise. I do think like the thing with Urbane Tawny going up into the tower, like I've said my piece on that, but after that happens, assuming that that happens, I think the way that all of the like promotion match challengers and all of those people, especially because you keep interacting with them throughout the course of the story, and that's one thing that I really appreciated about this game is how you keep seeing the same promotion match trainers like over and over. Like, yes, maybe it was a little annoying fighting Canary for like the fourth time, but the fact that like she was such a presence, and same thing with the other characters like Ivor and that kind of stuff, I thought was really cool. So having them all come back was awesome. I do think like the whole thing with Zygarde, like finally, like this is the time, this is what it is for, is to maintain balance, and the Mega Energy has gotten out of balance, and so trying to resolve that, I think, worked really well narratively with Zygarde, and especially with what happens post game, I think like Zygarde's story feels very complete. And L's kind of by proxy, although I guess L's is inherently incomplete given what you find out, but neither here nor there. I think gameplay wise, also the finale, it's kind of it kind of exists in two parts. The rogue battles, the rogue mega battles in that ending, like with the promotion match trainers, are maybe the worst fights in the game. They are so just chaotic. Like even I will admit that becomes a button mashing simulator. It is just completely incomprehensible. They're so strong. There's just too much going on. It is too much. But then you get to the Ange Floette fight, and while like from a like cinematic perspective, I don't think it's particularly interesting fight. Like I wish there was like there's all this stuff with Ange Flood and the huge tower and all the stuff, and we just fight like two flowers growing out of the ground. Like it's a little weird in that sense. But in terms of the actual battle mechanics, I think that fight is so well done. It really gets you to I saw some people were getting really frustrated by it, and to me that was just an indication that they had not really figured out what the game wanted from them out of this battle system. Like it really requires you, like there's a lot of actual cover in that map to hide behind and keep your Pokemon safe, and withdrawing your Pokemon is like the only option sometimes. Those long lasting lasers, like yes, they're big and they do a lot of damage, but they're in a very confined range, and so if you can get out of the way, you avoid that damage. Really gets you to focus on your positioning and all of that, I think, in a way that really was a good climax for everything the story had taught you to that point. I do think the final Zygarde fight was also a good test in that regard. It to me it kind of feels like Ange Floette was sort of the Dialga Palkia and Arceus, and then Zygarde is like the Arceus fight in that game, where it really kind of tests your skills even harder. But I think Ange Floette, just for the game, was really well executed. I do think just in general, like that final section might have been a little on the hard side if you aren't as comfortable with like action games like I am. Like I said, like I have beaten Elden Ring like 6 different times. I've beaten every other Souls game. Like I'm very comfortable with this style of action, dodge rolling, and that kind of stuff. So in that sense, I found it to be a very good level of difficulty, and still being engaging, but I definitely see how it could have been frustrating for other people in terms of maybe feeling a little overtuned.
Yeah, it was a little difficult for me. And that, it very much a lot of, having trouble managing the my Pokemon's health and my health, that was kind of in full force in the final battles. And like I definitely did like how everybody came together to help fight the megas and everything, and that was fun. But um but I still very much felt like throughout the climax that I had no idea what was going on. Um like I still don't quite understand what Ange is and why it started going berserk and why the tower was glowing and all of that. Um and yeah, it's like I and then AZ just died randomly. I thought he was immortal. Apparently not.
I do think that was pretty well explained. Like with L at the end, it's like, oh, you're not immortal. It's just this like very long life, and there's a sort of a wind down that happens. Like AZ, I do think even more so than X and Y felt very visibly and noticeably old in a way that obviously he was because he'd been around for 3,000 years, but he felt much more like an elderly person, like kind of getting towards the end. And so I wasn't
Yeah, well, I mean,
particularly surprised when it happened, but
I did notice that in a couple of cutscenes towards the end that it would end with like him coughing, and that's like the that's like the key um that's like a narrative trope to indicate that somebody is secretly violently ill or something. um so it's like in that sense I did kind of see it coming, but at the same time they it still didn't feel like it was well explained. But again, maybe that's a post game thing.
Well, and to add to that, I will say, so again, my wild theories. I always thought that part of the reason he was getting ill was because the tower was acting up. Um, and in my mind, it was like, oh, something's very wrong with the weapon. Something's very wrong with Lumios. So the person responsible for that was getting ill. To me, it also felt very like kind of cinematic storytelling in that AZ, after Lysander had been hit by the weapon, was passing some kind of torch. And I felt like, to me, in a storytelling sense, they were moving L or Lysander to be the new era's AZ. And I felt that was especially true with like his clothing and everything. So I mean, storytelling wise, it felt like he was passing it, but at the same time, to me, it also appeared like the sickness of Lumios was what is actually killing L. And like towards the end, when everything was resolved, it was the weapon giving him the grace that he had long sought to leave his life behind and leave it to the next generation to do things, if that makes sense.
yeah, I do think it was really well done how they kind of showed like as AZ like died and like that was no longer present, how L really did seem to kind of mirror, like L and AZ really are kind of mirrors of each other in a lot of ways, like it, and we just happen to see that like destructive side of Lysander a lot more than we ever did of AZ because of the necessity of it having to happen through flashbacks because of how long ago it was. But we see, I like that we managed to see the full kind of evolution of how this life happens. We see Lysander like do all of this destructive things with firing off the ultimate weapon, being consumed by this strong emotion, and then witnessing the fallout from that, being like, hey, I need to atone for this, go wander around. And then we come back and we see AZ in those final stages, like what that amount of time like passing does to someone, and like seeing those final stages. I think it's nice how we get to kind of see the
Yeah.
bookends of that journey through Lysander and AZ both.
Yeah, and like kind of going off of that, like when the first time that I met Lysander in ZA, I thought he was I honestly thought he was AZ's younger brother, um, who is who is like Lysander's ancestor. Um, and so in that sense, the two of them being parallels, having parallels kind of makes sense. And when you think about how, like, Grisham's thing about how, that Team Flare is, their um their whole reputation has been besmirched by Lysander, using the ultimate weapon, and how that kind of parallels that, that AZ's, that AZ was by all accounts a good king, and then he used the ultimate weapon and kind of, set the set the Pokemon world on this, new trajectory, and how, that kind of a thematic parallel of, like, that, that you make one mistake and it kind of has cascading effects. And so, like, yeah, I don't know what the moral of the story is there, but yeah.
Well, I mean, I could dive into that even more. But I know we don't have a ton more time left. We could obviously talk about the game in far greater detail. I do want to encourage our chat. Just let us know your thoughts on the ending, and if you're listening to this on YouTube, let us know your thoughts and let us know if L was a surprise to you. I will be honest, it took me a moment to go, oh, that's Lysander, but as we begin to wrap up, one of the things I do want to emphasize is it's very clear that this is a game that we have largely enjoyed and have really connected with. And I think especially the maturity of this game is unique for a Pokemon game. But as we begin to wrap up, one of the things I really want to ask everybody before we go is, you know what? We're going to do our outro question. Let's have it be which starter, before we go to our outro. Oh my gosh, I am tired. Let's have it be which starter did you choose? And then I think that'll be a perfect last question for today.
I ended up going with Tepig. Embor is my favorite starter of all time. I think the hate he gets is vastly overblown, and I was really happy to see him. And that Mega is so good. I was very happy with my decision once I saw that.
I picked I went with Totodile because Totodile was the very first starter I ever picked in a Pokemon game, so it was a little bit of, nostalgia for me. And, kind of feeling, um so yeah, kind of adventuring with Totodile then was a little nostalgic, but also made me realize kind of how much I have changed since then. Um, in that, um, I kind of got I kind of got attached to some of my other Pokemon a bit more than my starter. Um, so like, my Chandelure, and Medicham and Roserade and Heliolisk. Um, but yeah, I think out of the three starter choices, I still think that Totodile is my favorite, but there are just a lot of other Pokemon I like more.
Y'all know
Awesome.
exactly which
Well,
one I picked.
oh,
I legitimately did feel bad not picking Chikorita. Like, I was so happy to see it get its time, but Embor just I love Embor too much, and I also adore Victory Bell, so I was like, I have my grass type covered. I really like Embor. It's just not in the cards for this playthrough.
Yeah, I don't worry, Abby. I picked up this, and I on that note as well. I also did think that Victory Bell was my favorite of the new megas, and I decided to run the take the L on that one and not run with Victory Bell, because I could not have, like, there's no way.
I will say this was one of the hardest choices it's been for me in a while between starters because I absolutely love Totodile and I absolutely adore Embor. I feel like he needs more love. Um, but as we begin to wrap up here, I have one last outro question for everybody. I'll start with Abby, go to Storm, and then Caps and I, you can do our outros. But Abby, one more time, remind us who you are, what you do, and then what would you give this game in a tier listing of S to F? And why do you do that in 1 minute or less?
All right. I'm Abby. I am one of our Discord moderators, and I'm also one of the streamers here on this Twitch channel. You can catch me playing Pokemon Unite, opening up to viewer lobbies every Friday. In terms of rating this game, I'd give it, I think it's going to get an A minus. There are just a couple things that keep it down a little bit for me. The wild zones do feel really restrictive. I have some issues with the characters. I'm not going to get into it again. But the overall gameplay, the decks, especially compared to Arceus, I love the Pokemon in this game. They really are some of my favorites, and so it was just a really, really fun time.
And then, oh, go right ahead, Storm. You were already on it.
Yep. I am Storm, Bulbapedia leadership board member, and so you can find me on Bulbapedia or on the Bulbagarden Discord. I'm generally active on both. And I think I would rate this game like also an A minus, but for different reasons. That it's like I dislike I dislike the core gameplay, but I like everything else about it. So it's like once I finish everything, I don't know if I'm gonna go back to it, but I've been really enjoying it for what it is. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but I really, really liked revisiting like Lysander Cafe and Sycamore Pokemon Lab and all of those areas where they like recreated the area from XY in like a full, fully proportioned 3D space. And I thought that was the coolest thing, and I wish they could do more of that.
Awesome. Caps, can you remind everybody who you are, what you do, and rate the game in 1 minute?
Oh boy, can I. Hey guys, thanks Road for having me on. It's always a blast to do this, guys. Caps, hello, that's me. I do streams on this channel, and I also do admin work on the forums. I'm also active in the forum if you play on our forum. My rating of this game on a tier list, I'm gonna go with an S minus. I do think that overall, I liked this game a lot more than I expected. I thought the battling system was really good, and I'm really enjoying kind of playing around with the online stuff a little bit and figuring out some strategies on that. And so I think for that reason, it's pretty deep. I thought the story was great. The characters were even better. Compared to Arceus, I do have it ranked on my tier list a little bit lower than Arceus. But to be fair with you guys, and to be real, I've got a lot of Pokemon games in my S tier, TBH, on the whole tier list. It's among good company, we'll say that much. But I really enjoyed this game. It's not quite at the top of S, probably more like S minus, but it's in that top tier for me. I think this is a really, really good sequel to both X and Y and Arceus, and I'm really excited for the future of the series going forward. Now that both this Arceus and also Scarlet and Violet are under their belt, Gen 10, I've got high expectations.
And well, everybody, I am Rhodehawk. As you know, I am the humble host of Bulbagarden's Bulbacast. I also do YouTube videos on YouTube, which I drastically need to get caught up on the Pokemon Masters Scouts. Turns out when you put less money into a mobile game, makes it a lot harder to scout. Who knew? But with that as well, to rate this game on S to A. I mean S to F. I'm gonna put it at an A for now. Part of the reason for that, I absolutely love this game, but believe it or not, the DLC is dropping next month, which I could have sworn it was gonna be in February. I was fully planning on February. I'm really interested to see how my opinion of this game will change with the DLC. Historically, in my opinion, the DLC has made Pokemon games that have had DLC substantially better. As much as I love this game, I want to really explore that DLC before I do that. With that, everyone, we thank you for listening to us rant and talk and joke and gush about Corbo and how much people hated Tawny or Urbane. Once again, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we are so excited to see you all in the next cast. And we will definitely be doing a discussion on the DLC to Legends ZA as well. Have a wonderful night, and thank you, everybody.